Hi lovely people, welcome and welcome back to my channel. At the time of the release of this video, Janet Jackson is currently on her Together Again tour, which is her 10th tour in her career. I was fortunate enough to be able to see Janet on this tour, and as I watched her perform so many of her classic hits, it inspired me to revisit the breakout album Control, that not only launched Janet into superstardom, but ushered in the new Jack Swing era, which featured louder drums, faster tempos, as well as an infusion of R&B, dance pop, and hip hop. So, I wanted to take a look back at the creation of this album and highlight how it revolutionized what artistic independence and expression looks like in music. After signing to A&M Records in 1982, came the release of Janet's first two albums, her self-titled album released in 1982, and Dream Street released in 1984, peaking at number 63 and number 147 respectively on the US Billboard 200. Both albums underperformed and left Janet unhappy with her career trajectory. She was on the tail end of her stint on the show Fame, which she claimed that she hated doing, and she was only fulfilling her musical duties to appease her father, as Janet preferred to go to college instead. Amidst her professional struggles, she went against her family's wishes and married James DeBarge of the DeBarge family in 1984, which lasted a year until their annulment in 1985. Soon after, Janet fired her father, Joe Jackson, as her manager and hired A&M Records Senior Vice President of A&R, John McClain, to be her new manager, who introduced the singer to the songwriting and producing duo of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Jimmy Jam and Terry were originally members of the Minnesota-based band Flight Time, starting in 1972, which was later converted into the band The Time, also known as Morris Day and The Time. The group was reassembled under the direction of Prince, who began recruiting and producing newer artists around this time. In 1983, the duo decided to take on a side project by producing the lead single, Just Be Good to Me, by the SOS Band for their fourth album, On the Rise. Though the song was a major success, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard R&B Top 10 singles, their work on the song resulted in them missing a Time concert due to a blizzard that prevented them from traveling. When Prince found out, he fired Jimmy Jam and Terry instantly, as he forbade the group from producing anyone externally. Though the duo was devastated, the success of Just Be Good to Me officially launched their careers as a songwriting-producing powerhouse. A few years later, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were supposed to produce for Sharon Bryant, who was the lead singer for the group Atlantic Starr, but the singer decided to go in another direction. Jimmy Jam spoke on this situation by mentioning how Janet's manager John allowed them to pick from A&M's roster of artists to produce a few songs for them. The duo chose Janet and wanted to produce an entire album for her, as they felt that she had a great voice, great attitude, and they thought that she had a lot of untapped musical potential. When they had their first official meeting with Janet and her father, Joe Jackson was initially skeptical, as he did not want Janet to release music that had a similar risque sound as Prince. Production for the album took 6 weeks and took place entirely in Minneapolis at their Flight Time studio in 1985. Janet arrived only with her high school friend Melanie Andrews, who also wrote Let's Wait Awhile. Throughout Janet's first few days in Minneapolis, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis spent time with Janet going to the club or the movies or spending time at the lake. They used these outings to learn more about Janet and to get her comfortable enough to open up to them. As days passed, Janet wondered when the actual recording process would take place, but little did she know they have already begun writing lyrics to what would become Control, in which the lyrics documented her personal family and relationship struggles up until that point. At that point in Janet's career, she was never asked to offer any input in her musical direction, so the making of Control allowed her to show a side of her artistry that was suppressed. When discussing the creative process, Janet said, quote, "I wanted to do it differently than being handed a piece of music and told, 'Here, sing this,' which it was in the past. I wanted to express myself, and Jimmy and Terry helped me do that. Jimmy and I rode around Minneapolis, and we talked about my life and what I had gone through. We talked about everything, and they made me feel open enough and comfortable enough to speak to them about everything, because I was kind of withdrawn. My family were not able to trust people, so we grew up very sheltered and were very private. So Jimmy and Terry allowed me to open up to them and express myself," unquote. Jimmy Jam and Terry saw that Janet possessed a feisty side of her personality, based on the television shows Janet starred in, but felt that her early records featured a softer spoken and calmer aura from Janet. Their mission was to bring that attitude out, and have Janet sing in a lower registry that would highlight the aggression and resilience they knew that Janet had in her, which resulted in tracks such as Nasty. When speaking on her vocal technique, the duo praised Janet's vocal control and ability to blend into the instruments. Terry Lewis mentioned that, quote, "A lot of people say that Janet is not a great singer, but Janet is a great singer. In order to be a great singer, you don't have to be the loudest singer. You just have to have control of what you like to do. And to me, style wins over volume, unquote. Jimmy Jam followed up by saying, quote, "Those little elements, the breath, the sighs, the laughs, those things she would always do, we would just leave them in there. A lot of times, it was a mistake. For us, all the things that were outtakes were always the pieces that we always tried to make sure was in there because that was the personality of her," unquote. One fun fact about the production is that the engineer for the album abruptly quit on them, leaving Jimmy Jam and Terry to pick up the pieces. Their novelty in sound engineering resulted in some of the distorted and loud sounds within the album. But given the success of the album, I'm sure everyone is glad things worked out the way that it did. The album Control was eventually released in February of 1986 to universal acclaim. Control became Janet's first #1 album in the US and featured 5 top 10 singles from the album, which include Nasty, Control, What Have You Done For Me Lately, Let's Wait Awhile, and Janet's first #1 song, When I Think of You, which was the song Janet's brother Jermaine Jackson predicted to go #1 when he first heard the album. The album received 4 Grammy nominations and 12 American Music Award nominations, in which Janet took home 4 awards. The album has been certified diamond as it has sold over 10 million copies worldwide and was ranked number 111 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list in 2020.
Now, since a lot has been made in the press about you the word control constantly comes up, taking control of your career. How do you feel when you look back at things that you did before that?
I'm just glad that I made that decision to take control of my life. I think that's the only way you can really have great success is by taking control of your own destiny. And looking back, there were a lot of times when I wanted to say things, but I would keep my mouth shut because I was so young, thinking that they would say, well, what does this little kid know? So I don't think that's the way to do it, but I'm glad that I did finally make that decision.
Control was and is textbook musical innovation, and it marked a shift in the culture for what it looks and sounds like for other Black artists in the industry to make that mainstream crossover to pop while staying true to the sounds of funk, disco, and R&B. Jimmy Jam once mentioned that the music for Janet became her superpower, and she realized that she could say so much more through her music. And as listeners, we could sense the stripping of the girl next door image from Good Times and Different Strokes and the unveiling of a feisty, headstrong woman who knew she was in control, literally and figuratively. With the album opener, Control, Janet immediately paints the listeners a picture of the trajectory of this album by saying, "This is a story about control, my control, control of what I say, control of what I do, and this time I'm going to do it my way." The almost 10-minute music video displays Janet's willingness to separate from her family to establish herself away from her family's name and success. The song Nasty originated from a real situation when Janet was catcalled and harassed by a few men in the streets of Minnesota while she was recording the album. Janet used the emotional abuse she endured from that incident to provide her take on how she feels about disrespectful men and describe how she expects to be treated. The song peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, and the music video won a VMA in 1987 for Best Choreography. The lead single for the album, What Have You Done For Me Lately, was a song that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis originally had in their vault, but decided to rewrite it and use it for Janet, as the song became her unofficial statement regarding her divorce from ex-husband James DeBarge. With lyrics such as, "You seem to think you're God's gift to this earth. I'm telling you, no way. You ought to be thankful for the little things, but little things are all you seem to give." It served as a record many women could relate to as they expressed their relationship frustrations, as well as a general social reference. You Can Be Mine joyfully describes Janet's openness to dating or being in a relationship, while the subsequent track, The Pleasure Principle, written by Monte Moore, highlights the complicated nature of seeking pleasure to avoid the pain in a relationship. It features Janet realizing that all of the materialistic things her previous relationship came with did very little to bring her happiness. This song and the music video is one of my all-time favorites. The simplicity of the video matched with the lyrics just makes you feel what Janet was going through, and it also just made you want to dance with her. 2 of my favorite tribute performances to this song would be from singers Maya in 2001 and Normani in 2018. Looking back, I can see how When I Think of You went number 1. It has such a wholesome, jovial, and lighthearted feel to it that appealed to various demographics. Whether it was teenagers coming of age, young adults, or couples in happy, long-lasting relationships, the song is a positive affirmation of being in love and just basking in the moment. He Doesn't Even Know I Am Alive is one of those songs where I feel like Janet's voice is at peak control. Her voice is so fluid and perfectly moves with the instrumentation. she is able to mesh with the production so seamlessly and gracefully. It is a song I would point toward to anyone who would dare claim that Janet can't sing. Let's Wait a While is one of those timeless classics in which Janet describes as a song about a couple waiting to get into a physical relationship. Peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, the sultry ballad is another example of the singer showcasing her control and creating boundaries for herself in a relationship, while still wanting to maintain that bond and closeness with a person. It makes sense why this song was so successful and had massive appeal worldwide to this very day. The final track, Funny How Time Flies, was a song that even Janet's mother did not want to finish listening to the end, as this mature and sensual content highlighted that even though Janet is the baby of the family, she was a grown woman who had different sides to her that she wanted to express in her music. Control was a truly revolutionary work of art that not only kickstarted a new genre of music, in which her own superstar brother Michael gained inspiration for his album Dangerous, but it set off the shift of artistic expression for what we call eras in music. Janet was the ultimate orchestrator of her image and how she wanted to be viewed with each project. Her image never felt forced or contrived, but simply as a woman going through maturation and documenting her experiences in the calmest and most unassuming way possible. Several artists have praised Janet for how she has inspired them, such as Beyonce, in which she said, quote, "I've learned so much from watching her over her career. She starts the trends and she taught me you have to reinvent yourself with every new album. She's still herself, but she always has a new thing, a new hair color, a new look, a new type of album," unquote. As well as Mariah Carey, who said, quote, "I think of Janet as an inspiration. Janet Jackson's Control is one of those most classic albums, and I also think that she took videos to another level as a female," unquote. Both artists are also known for their artistry and elevating each of their projects with timeless visuals, coupled with a new and fresh sound that is completely different from their last. Aside from that, it was great to see Control shoot to number 1 on the Apple Top 40 US Pop Album Chart in 2021, during the album's 35th anniversary. It shows how the album transcends time and will continue to have an ongoing influence over the music industry for generations. Let me know in the comments what you think of Control and what your favorite song from the album is. What is your favorite Janet Jackson album and why? What are some other albums do you feel has had similar influential cultural and social impact the way Control has had in music? Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.